And here we go.
Sports!
I listen to you guys all the time.
It's awesome.
I'm in the mood for one of your classic anecdotes.
Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, that's enough.
Hey guys, there is someone I want you to meet.
Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun on Off the Hook Sports. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net.
Hey, look, we're all part of the same team here.
Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, here we go with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Jimmy Himes will join us very shortly as he does so on a Wednesday. We love visiting with Jimmy. We'll have today's tough question coming up, and that will revolve around one Rickey Gibson, who may be playing the NIL game, or maybe he's just not happy with the way things are going at Tennessee. We'll discuss that with Jimmy. Also, later in the program, we'll talk some Tennessee basketball. Josh Heupel makes another hire. Is this good or bad? Caleb and I genuinely disagree on this. This day in Tennessee sports history, stat of the day as well. So we've got a lot going on. So let's go ahead and bring in the man, the legend. Jimmy Himes joins us now. Jimmy, how are you, sir?
Dave, I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Better than maybe Willie Martinez when he heard the news about Rickey Gibson. So let's dive into that because
I'm doing well too, guys, by the way.
Oh,
Hi,
sorry.
Caleb.
I'm sorry, Joe. Did I not ask you how you were doing? Jimmy's timing threw me off. All right, so let's go ahead and get to today's tough question, and it's brought to you by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. And of course, it's going to be about Rickey Gibson.
Today's tough question. Boom. You heard that. Now take it. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, so Rickey Gibson enters the transfer portal. Today's tough question will be announced here momentarily, but let's just go ahead and throw it out there. Why? Why would Rickey Gibson decide to enter the transfer portal? Jimmy, I'm curious how the news hit you, because here's a young man who could be in the position to be the #1 cornerback with Jermod McCoy. I think he's going to be out for some of the season, but they continue to say he'll be back for the season. It's just a very curious move, very curious timing right before spring practice begins.
Money. It's all about money. It's all about how much can I get in the portal. He probably found out that somebody else was making as much or more money than he was making. He felt like he should probably make as much or more than they were making. And that's what it's – what else could it possibly be other than I'm trying to negotiate to get more money on an NIL deal. So to me – although I don't know it 100%, it certainly seems pretty obvious that the only reason he'd enter the portal as a returning starter on a college football playoff team, the only reason he'd enter the portal is to try to negotiate more money.
Caleb, you pretty much said the same thing. You want to chime in here? Because I can't argue. I could throw out other possibilities, but I don't feel confident about any of them.
Yeah, no pun intended, my money is on money. I think this is a Mike Matthews situation from earlier in the all season when Mike Matthews entered the portal and came back. I don't know if you guys think this. I think he's actually going to come back. I think he realizes Tennessee needs him because Jermod McCoy is banged up. He knows how badly Tennessee needs him. And I think this is a negotiating ploy. We're going to talk a little bit later in the show, Jimmy, but I want to get your thoughts on this just now because we already have you. But there was a report that came out yesterday. This is one of the reasons schools are canceling spring games. We read from On3 is that tampering now in college football is so prevalent that it's either tamper or fall behind at this point. And so and agents are getting involved. So my guess is someone got in Rickey Gibson's ear and said, hey, you can negotiate a much higher price because Tennessee really, really, really needs you. So why don't you use this as leverage?
I think that's exactly what transpired. no other explanation at this point makes sense to me. So, and he's not the only one that's doing this, but yeah, I think that's it. And look, Tennessee needs him. So how much more are they willing to pay than what they're already paying? Here's the other thing too about this. And I was just reading today where somebody said, well, now they're going to revenue sharing, they're going to have contracts. They've always had contracts. They have multi-year contracts. The athletic director told me that more than 40% of the football players a year ago, this is going in last year, had multi-year contracts. The problem is the multi-year contracts are not binding. So they can leave at any time. You know, I'm told, depending on who you want to listen to, Nico Iamaleava has a 3 or 4 year contract. The person I trust most said 4 years. But he could break it at any time because it's not binding. He can leave and get more money to go to Miami or somewhere else if he wants to, and there's no penalty. So to me, a contract is, I can't say completely worthless, but it's almost worthless in favor of the football player or the athlete if it's not a binding contract, because the school is going to have to honor it. But the player can leave whenever he wants to negotiate a better deal with another school.
Jimmy, I'm completely with you on that. I don't know what can be done to fix this other than, and I wrote a column about this, other than the players need a union so that there is some sort of negotiation between the two parties. And I know a lot of people are anti-union out there on our message board. I'm not saying union in every case. I'm just saying union in college football, because you have to be able to negotiate on both sides to have binding contracts that say you can't go to another SEC school or you can't do this or that. But I don't know that anybody has made that push for that to happen.
I don't either. Now, if somebody makes that push, let's say, let's just take Tennessee out of the equation. Let's say Ole Miss makes that push to make it binding. And a player says, well, wait a minute. I can go to Mississippi State or I can go to Alabama or Georgia and their contract's not binding. Why would I go to your school when I have an opportunity to renegotiate every year to get more money? So I think it's going to be difficult for a school to enforce a binding contract unless all the other schools agree to it. And to unionize, it's going to be interesting to see if they can get there. And you're talking about football only, right? Because
I guess, I mean, I get some basketball schools. I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, in football, it would be, there's a part of me that thinks it's easier to manage in football because you only have 130, 140 schools roughly. Basketball, you got 350 or so. Now, in basketball, you're dealing mostly with 13 players. In football, you're dealing with 85. So when you add up the numbers, there's probably not a whole lot of difference in the numbers. But I think it's going to be really hard to get a group to agree on becoming unionized, because they're going to look at it like, no, wait a minute, if we unionize this thing, we don't want to be restricted on our potential earnings. So I'm not sure that they would agree to go in that direction. Right now, they hold all the cards, right? And I don't know how much of that they're willing to give up. I think there needs to be a cap in some way, some form or fashion. I think there needs to be accountabilities where you can't become a free agent every year. Well, but will it stand up in court? I don't know.
All right, a couple of comments I want to post up there. General Ursa says time to pony up. And then Derek says talking kids away from the cliff is getting ridiculous. I agree. So I want to ask Jimmy this, the second part of today's tough question. And that will be, what would you do if you're Josh Heupel? And it's brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott.
Jimmy, we don't know the exact dollar figures, but I'll throw this at you. If you're Josh Heupel, what's your mindset with Rickey Gibson? Because you really, really need him, especially with McCoy's injury. But there's a part of me that just wants to say kick rocks because you do it right before spring practice, what would be your mindset? We obviously don't know how much he's going to get paid, but.
Well, I would be concerned about it. You need to keep him, but do you need to break the bank to keep him? So now define that. I don't know. Just pick numbers. If he's making $100,000 in NIL money, I have no idea what he's making, but if he's making $100,000 NIL and now he's asking for $500,000, he walks. I'm not paying him that. Now, if he wants to go to 125 or 150, I think that would be more manageable. And again, those are hypothetical numbers. I'm just trying to make a point.
Right.
About, I would bend a little bit to keep him, but I'm not going to destroy the balance of what I'm paying other people. I'm not going to pay him out of what you might consider fair market value. So it'll be interesting to see if they can reach an agreement.
It's insane.
I mean, this is it. Jimmy, how much do you think, and this is has got to be a factor. How aware would Tennessee be if another school is offering Rickey Gibson an absurd amount of money? Is it possible that Rickey Gibson is like hinting to Tennessee, well, maybe this other school is offering me a lot of money, but nobody's really offering him that much money, and Tennessee just has to guess that they're not and bank on it?
Yeah, I think that, and see, this might not be just Rickey Gibson. This might be his dad, his agent, his mother, his advisor, whoever. And they might come forth and say, hey, we've got an offer of $250,000 from Kentucky, and if you don't pay it, we're going. And now Tennessee is like, well, let's prove that. You know, we see this negotiating coaches' contracts all the time, don't we? Where the agent floats out the name of, hey, these schools are interested in John Doe when they weren't, but they throw it out there so that the school says, oh, well, we got to match that. And there's no proof that other school was interested in that person. So we've seen that with coaches, and now we're seeing it, I think, with players. But it would be hard, I think, for Tennessee to find out an exact number. Rickey Gibson or his representatives could say a number, but do we really know what that number is?
No, I don't. Here's what I would do. If this evolution of NIL, I'm putting myself ahead of the curve, Jimmy. What do you think about that?
You always do.
Yeah, I always do. Okay. Here are my thoughts. We hear about all this money going into, let's just pick a school, Notre Dame, right? We hear about their NIL fund is just blown up because they have a lot of money and guys and gals that are very passionate about football. So why can't Notre Dame or whoever that school might be that has more NIL money than anybody else, why can't they go to a young man and put it in a contract? We'll give you a little bit more money on the front end. If you're going to get $100,000 from one school, we'll give you $150,000, but you're going to sign this 3-year contract like Nico did. I mean, why can't some school just tie up their entire roster?
Well, they could, but the only way to do it is to make it a binding contract. And that's where the issue comes in, because Notre Dame's the only school that has a binding contract, then they're going to have difficulty signing these players because other schools are not going to have a binding contract.
So let me make sure that I got this right. They're not binding contracts as I see it because this is all new. It's not some NCAA rule, right?
Correct. It's whatever deal you make with a collective.
Jump in there, Caleb. I see you getting ready.
Yeah. A couple of things I want to jump into. So we all agree on the main reason Rickey Gibson's leaving, on the reason we think. Let me throw out some less. Yes, exactly. Let's throw out some less likely possible scenarios, and I just want to see how possible you guys think this is. So, okay, let me throw this one out. What if with Jamal McCoy being hurt, Josh Heupel and the Tennessee coaching staff are targeting other cornerbacks in the transfer portal, and Rickey Gibson took that personally? How possible is it that he left over that?
It's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible, but I don't think it's very likely.
All right, so what about this one? What if Rickey Gibson likes how being the number 2 cornerback elevates his profile because he guards the less talented receiver, and he doesn't want to be a number 1 cornerback because he's worried about how it'll make him look on the field? and so he's bolting since Jamal McCoy's hurt.
Okay, possible, yes. Highly unlikely, because think about it. Football players typically are very confident in themselves. And Rickey Gibson could improve his stock if he plays as the number one cornerback and guards Ryan Williams of Alabama. He could also hurt his stock if he guards Ryan Williams and gets torched for 10 catches and 200 yards. So
that's what I mean. So what if he's running from that moment is what I'm saying. What if he's scared of that moment?
Yeah. And I'm thinking, okay, that's possible. But how many cornerbacks that play that position run from the moment? I mean, they have to be a cocky group of players who think they're better than everybody. And they're always chirping, right, at receivers. And receivers are chirping back. So I think there's a certain confidence level that comes with the position at cornerback or receiver to where I think it's unlikely either one of those positions would back away and say, I'm not good enough to be the number one receiver. I'm not good enough to be the number one cornerback. So I don't want to be put in that position. I think that's unlikely, but it is possible.
Well, I'll throw another one at you. What if he's heard from coaches that are tampering that say Willie Martinez is not getting you the best prepared for the NFL?
Well, yeah, that's possible as well.
Yeah, it's a very strange situation. Would he transfer, Jimmy, in the middle of the semester? I mean, how would that? Do they still go to class? Do players still go to class?
Oh, I don't think they do. I think they've made a mockery of that. I think if they really dove into it, there's no way in the world, and there have been players that have done this, that you can play at 5 schools in 5 years and all of your credits transfer. There's no way. So I think there are a whole bunch of, quote, ineligible academically, close quote, players that are on rosters because nobody wants to challenge the eligibility academically. They made a farce of that. So now it doesn't make any sense to transfer. Well, I don't know how you would transfer right now and get enrolled in another school.
I don't either. But if I want him there for spring practice if I'm another school.
Yeah, I do too. So is there a school that doesn't start classes until February 25th? Maybe you can sneak into that school. I think what he would likely do is just stay at Tennessee until the semester ends and then transfer to his new destination. That's what I think he would do. But I'm with you. If I'm Florida State and I've reached a deal with Rickey Gibson, I want him in as soon as I want him to go through spring practice.
And I wasn't taking a shot at Willie Martinez. Derek pointed out that he has put out pros and developed them. So, but I just know of other situations in which players didn't like a position coach, and had they been able to transfer, they would have. But again, the timing seems to be all about money.
Can I ask?
Yes.
Can I ask both you guys a quick ball question? Y'all have covered a lot more practices than I have in my life. So, 4 cornerbacks are coming into this class. One's a 4-star, but I think Tennessee's getting better with their recruiting. So you would have to assume they're better than cornerbacks in the past they've recruited. How easy is it for at the cornerback position for a player to step in as a freshman relative to other positions? Is it closer to like stepping in as a running back or stepping in as an offensive lineman, which that's like the gap to me of experience versus you can step in as a freshman?
Caleb, I think it's more like a running back.
Oh, too.
Because you can say, as a cornerback and you're playing man coverage, you got this guy. Go guard him. So I think it's easier, more comparable to a running back than an offensive lineman. Offensive lineman, also there's the physical strength aspect of that. There's the technique. There's the ability to be cohesive with your teammates on the offensive line. But as a cornerback, if you're playing man coverage, go get that guy, and so it lessens your responsibilities. So yes, I think as a cornerback, that's one of the positions you can play the quickest in college.
So I agree with that. And here's another possibility. Maybe the incoming freshman corners showed up and he was like, man, they're super athletic. I can't play here. Again, we're just throwing out goofy possibilities. Go ahead, Caleb.
Yeah, so I mean, we're saying that could give Tennessee a little more leverage with 4 cornerbacks in this recruiting class that are stepping in the spring to work with this team. I was just throwing that out there.
Well, it could be that that Rickey Gibson has looked at these cornerbacks and thought, my playing time might get cut some, or maybe he found out that one of these 4-star cornerbacks was making X amount of money, and he's like,
No.
if you're paying him this, I want that.
Yep.
So
I got no argument with that. I also have no argument as we switch gears a little bit with Tennessee. The win at LSU, maybe it wasn't the most beautiful win in the world, 65-59. But Jimmy, what are your thoughts on this Tennessee basketball team as they could compete for a number 1 seed? They're going to compete for a number 1 seed. Your thoughts on them to this point?
Dave, I think this team has a really high ceiling. I mean, now that was not a pretty win against LSU. They made a number of mistakes. They had a difficult time putting the game away. I know this is a very unpopular opinion, but it's because I hold him in such high regard. Zakai Ziegler makes about 2 or 3 plays every game that you're scratching your head like, what in the world are you doing? And he made some of those plays late against LSU where he turned the ball over, made a bad decision, and helped LSU get back in the game. I'd like to see him clean it up. Now, on the other hand, he makes a heck of a lot of great plays for Tennessee. But every now and then I get bothered by a mistake that he makes that he's such a good player that I don't think he should make. Kind of like a quarterback throwing into triple coverage and having a couple of interceptions in the game. Now, I think this team has a very high ceiling, in particular when they shoot well, and they are capable of shooting well. But the other part of that is I think their ceiling is pretty low. Because when they have these games where they shoot poorly, I think there are a whole lot of teams that could beat them. So I think they're vulnerable to being upset in the NCAA tournament by a lower seed. So they concern me with that. I thought last night, basically, they didn't get much at all out of the bench, did they? I mean, I didn't, Cade Phillips didn't do much of anything. Dubar came in and slipped and fell out of bounds. You didn't get anything out of Boswell. It got nailed on the screen. Gainey hit a 3, but he also missed several shots badly. So I'm not really crazy about Tennessee's bench either. So when they're playing very well, they could beat him out of the country. But when they're not playing well, there are a whole bunch of teams out there that could get them.
Yeah. What would you be more surprised by? Let me ask both you guys this question. Second round exit or Final Four?
I'd be more surprised by Final Four.
I probably would too at this point.
And in part because they've never been there. Do I think this is a team capable? I do. But if you go by history, it's hard for me to project them going to the Final Four versus a second round exit. And I'll say this, Rick Barnes at Tennessee, his NCAA tournament history, I didn't realize this, but somebody had a chart the other day that in the last 6 years, Tennessee has been more successful in the NCAA tournament than any other team as far as the number of wins, as far as the units that you accumulate. On the flip side of that, if you look at Rick Barnes' career, 38-year career in the NCAA tournament, he's 30-28, and I counted 42 coaches that have a winning percentage of 60% or better in the NCAA tournament, all time. This counts Mike Krzyzewski, Roy Williams, John Wooden. That's not very good. 30-28 in the NCAA tournament's not very good. Now, when he gets a 2 seed, he's pretty good. With a 2 seed, he's been to the final. He's had 5 2 seeds, 1 Final Four, 3 Elite Eights, and a Sweet 16. So if he's a 1 or a 2 seed, it looks like he would do pretty well in the postseason. But there's just something about this team that I have trouble trusting completely.
Let me modify the question for both of you guys. Sorry, Caleb. Would you be more surprised by a first round exit or Final Four?
I would be more surprised by a first round exit.
Yeah, I would
because I mean they're going to be a 1 or a 2 seed, and whoever they play is not going to be any good. So it's going to be one of these teams from a bad conference that won their conference. And I mean, heck, one year, a few years ago, somebody got in with a 12-22 record. So that's I would be really shocked if Tennessee loses in the first round. I'd be more shocked at that than if Tennessee made a run to the Final Four.
And Caleb says the regular season doesn't matter. 12-22, Caleb. They made the tournament. Come on.
Do what you got to do to get to the tournament, man. I mean, I agree. I'd be more shocked by a first-round exit. And to Jimmy's point, this was a stat of the day one day before I get to my what I wanted to ask. Before last year, every Tennessee NCAA tournament exit under Rick Barnes, they lost to a lower seed in the tournament, which was actually Jerry Green-esque. I don't know if you guys remember, but all 4 years they made the tournament under Jerry Green, they lost to a lower seed when they got eliminated all 4 years. So it's kind of, that's classic underachieving. But Jimmy, can I defend Tennessee for last night's win for a minute?
Okay.
Even though it was ugly. What about the idea that it was like the definition of a trap game? I mean, you just got your biggest win of the season, I think, a top 10 win on the road against Texas A&M on Saturday. That was a really, really difficult win. Coming to town this Saturday, you got Alabama. And Tuesday, on the heels of that win, you got to travel to Baton Rouge. No disrespect to Baton Rouge, great place. But for a late night game against a team that you really don't want to play. And I know the crowd wasn't in it, but it felt the lethargicness of the crowd kind of like creeped into the road team in Tennessee as well as it did LSU, the home team. So is it fair to say that maybe they just, I mean, there was just the classic trap game and they looked ugly?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's good when you have a trap game that the opponent you're playing has only won 3 conference games.
Yeah,
so that helped. I think if Tennessee had played a better opponent on the road last night, they'd have lost.
I agree.
But yeah, and LSU. I mean, Tennessee had a 14-point lead with just a few minutes left, right?
Yeah.
And they let LSU creep back into it, and part of it was just some. I'm just calling it like it is, some dumb plays on Tennessee's part, and forcing the issue, just silly passes. So. Yeah, that should not have been as close as it was. But, yeah, I do think it was a bit of a trap game. And I think Tennessee was fortunate they were playing a bad opponent.
Jamai Mashak had 4 offensive rebounds. Igor Milic Jr. had 4. What did you think of Tennessee's play in the paint? Because I know time is running out, but the only way I can see raising that floor, as you were talking about earlier, so that you don't get upset in one of the first 2 rounds, is not actually by shooting the ball really well. It's by strong play in the paint. What do you think of the development there?
Well, I thought it was big last night. Tennessee out-rebounded LSU 44-28. They had 17 offensive rebounds. Tennessee outscored LSU in the paint 32-20. And I think the reason they did that is offensive rebounding. It wasn't necessarily on set plays. It was putting baskets back in after it got an offensive rebound. So I thought that was a huge key for the game. Tennessee's offensive rebound, their ability to score on a possession instead of having a whole bunch of empty possessions. So, yeah, Dave, I thought that was a huge point of the game for Tennessee.
How big of a deal has it been, Jimmy, that Felix Opera, I think, has really established an offensive presence in the paint? He had 15 points last night, went 6 of 6 from the field. Is he at the point now to where you can actually play inside-out basketball with him underneath the rim?
I think so. There was a time earlier in the year where if you threw it inside, I wouldn't think that guy's not going to score. And now he's showing some moves inside to score. You mentioned he was 6 of 6 in the field. I think you can make an argument he was Tennessee's player of the game because he not only had the 15 points, he had 7 rebounds, he had 2 blocks, he altered some other shots from LSU. I thought he played extremely well for Tennessee. If he can play that way, Tennessee's ceiling goes even higher. And I think he has really improved as a player. He looks more comfortable now with what he's doing. The post moves that you're suggesting, which I think have improved, I think he's turned into a really nice center for Tennessee.
Great stuff, Jimmy. By the way, Jimmy is from Louisiana, so he knows Baton Rouge well.
Yes.
Jimmy, your favorite Cajun dish is? I know it, but I just like talking about it because it's great food.
You talking about gumbo?
No, is it
Creole?
For you, it's Creole, right?
Shrimp Creole.
Yeah, for me, it's etouffee. I could eat that stuff every single day. And I still remember covering the game at LSU. It was after the hurricane and sitting there, and it's so hot because they have an open press box, and you're just sweating, but I'm eating this greasy food because it's so good. I can't stop myself. It was like happy and sad at the same time, if that makes sense.
Well, one thing, so I moved to Lafayette to run the Baton Rouge Morning Advocates News Bureau. The first 6 weeks I was there, there was a crawfish boil every weekend, and I gained 20 pounds the first 6 weeks
Wow.
in Lafayette. And I decided that I had to go on a diet.
Jimmy told me this one thing too that was really entertaining about the Louisiana area, that pretty much everybody knocks off about noon on Friday.
Oh yeah, that's exactly right. If you didn't have your story and all your sources and talk to everybody by noon, because they would go to this Mexican place called La Fonda's, or they'd go to Don's Seafood Restaurant, and that was it. Their lunch lasted from noon to 5. It was amazing. And it took me a few weeks to figure that out. But once I figured it out, I thought, well, why don't I just do the same thing?
Wasn't Louisiana like it's almost like Tennessee, isn't it? Where it's like 3 separate states, like southwestern Louisiana and southeastern
South Louisiana, North Louisiana, and mid Louisiana. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is. It's almost like it goes vertical. In Tennessee, their 3 states go horizontally.
Right.
But yeah, you're exactly right. Well, and even when I was in Lafayette, I'd go cover a police jury meeting, and then I would I got a couple of questions. So I would call this police juror's home, and the person that would answer the phone could not speak English. It was Cajun French.
Oh gosh.
I'm like, are you kidding me? So I'd finally get in touch with the police juror, and we had a laugh about that. But yeah, there were a number of people in the Lafayette area that had this Cajun French in this accent that I couldn't understand, even though I'm from the state of Louisiana.
Well,
That's
we're gonna make it a poll question right now. Your favorite Cajun dish, is it etouffee, gumbo, Creole, or Derek votes in with a black and red fish with Cajun gravy? It's also good.
Yes, it is.
It's ridiculous how good that food is. All right, have a blessed day, Jimmy. We appreciate you more than you know, and we will talk to you soon.
Okay, guys, y'all have a great day.
Thanks,
Have a good one, Jimmy.
Nice enough to join us. Oh, and I forgot to mention his. Let me bring Jimmy back. Jimmy, you still there? Tell us about what you're doing on the YouTube. Oh, now he lost his mic. Major fumble by Dave. All right. You got to check him out. Him and Paige, on full disclosure, they do a fantastic job. His rewind pieces are unbelievably good. Started way back with Roy Kramer, was one of the first ones, and he just keeps rolling on. It is fantastic. So all you have to do is Google Jimmy Himes, and you'll be able to check that out. We certainly appreciate Jimmy's time. Portions of the program are brought to you by our good friends at Double D Piping and Protection. When it comes to fire suppression, there's nobody like Double D.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Like the name, but serious or something. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun, represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Also want to remind you that the Hemp House is the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Go to hemphousechat.com, hemphousechat.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off. HOOK for 10% off. It's time for Bank on It, brought to you by Commercial Bank. Commercial Bank, member FDIC, life made better. What are we banking on today, Caleb?
The Tennessee football program landed another commitment yesterday. CJ Edwards out of New Jersey committed to the Vols for 2026. He is an edge rusher. He is the first official commitment that Coach Chop landed since Lavorne Harbin has been promoted to an on-field assistant coach. Tennessee was the first school to offer him. He committed over a few other schools, Michigan being the most notable. Comes out of St. Joseph High School in Metuchen, New Jersey. 6'4", 215 pounds. Not rated on some services, a 3-star on others, but he is fast rising. And this is my argument, is that this is one of the guys that Tennessee banks on becoming a steal.
Look at that.
Yeah, that they bank on becoming a steal. They hired Lavorne Harbin specifically for this reason, his ability to evaluate talent, particularly on the defensive line. So Tennessee recruits two ways. They shell out money for the 2 5-stars for sizzle in the class, right? Mike Matthews, David Sanders, Nico Iamaleava in a class. And then they spend the rest of the time identifying talent extremely early and trying to get them in before anybody else does and finding guys that nobody else wants. And they spend a lot of time and effort on that. They're banking on CJ Edwards at 6'4", 215. He's got a very quick first step, very athletic. He's got James Pierce level athleticism. They're banking on him maintaining that athleticism as he puts on probably 20 pounds into his senior year and through his conditioning program in college. That's the bank on it.
My question is, we've got our own recruiting rankings that we talk about on offthehooksports.com. If you don't know, it's called the Anywhere, Somewhere, Nowhere guy. So I'm going to ask you, is he an anywhere, somewhere, or nowhere guy? Obviously, it's not a nowhere. He's landed at Tennessee. Bank on it, brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions.
Caleb, let's be honest, he's a somewhere guy. He had offers from Boston College, Duke. I mean, no real football powerhouse. Tennessee's pretty much the only one. Do you think he'll be an anywhere guy? Does he have that type of ability as we get closer to when he enrolls at, well, we think UT because he's commitment, but who knows?
He's a somewhere guy who can turn into an anywhere guy once he develops at Tennessee. And this, by the way, I think we forget this. James Pierce was kind of a somewhere guy when he committed to Tennessee a few years ago.
4-star though.
Yeah, but he was like the 18th ranked edge rusher, like the 173rd ranked player nationally, like not even in the top 5 in his home state, like good, but not like blow you away. And then he became one of the best NFL draft prospects in the nation of any position. I think now James Pierce was 6'5", 220, whereas this guy, CJ Edwards, is 6'4", 215. The catch is always the thing that the question is, and Dave, you've probably covered a lot of conditioning players like this. Probably the biggest thing that causes players to bust, isn't it, is once they put on the weight that they need to put on to play at the SEC level, they unfortunately lose their athleticism, right?
Yes. And, well, you've got to know if he's going to be able to handle more weight with that and keep his speed. If not, he's a linebacker, right? I don't think anybody sees him as a linebacker, but if you put on that weight, and I've seen that happen with players before, you put on that weight, you don't keep your speed, well, that's problematic. That turns you into a different player.
Exactly. So that's Tennessee's playing a betting game with him. They're playing a betting game that CJ Edwards, once he puts on 20 pounds, will maintain his athleticism. Now, that's part of what they kind of have to do still to recruit, and that's part of early evaluations and things like that. And maybe they got a good conditioning program that lets them know that stuff happens. But they went after this guy so early. I mean, they were the first school to offer him, and they've been going after him hard. And again, Lavorne Harbin going after him. That's what makes me bank on it, that he's a somewhere guy now who's going to turn into an anywhere guy when he's at Tennessee. I don't think he'll be as good as James Pierce, but I don't think James Pierce will be as good as Jordan Ross. But I do potentially see like a Joshua Josephs in this guy. I think he could be Joshua Josephs.
We've said James Pierce, his name 3 or 4 times. How much do you think he changed Tennessee's football program? He didn't have the impact on the field that a lot of people wanted last year, but you're able to point to this guy and say, there's a first-round NFL draft pick. So that's significant to me. I don't know that they necessarily get a commitment from this young man, Edwards, CJ Edwards, if they don't have Pierce on their resume.
I think James Pierce changed it, but if James Pierce changed it he's Peyton Manning and Byron Young was Heath Schuler.
Okay.
I think Byron Young changed it first.
Might be a column in there for me. That's pretty good stuff right there.
Yeah, I think Byron Young. Remember, this guy was stocking groceries and then just walked on to Georgia Military Prep and then got signed. And so, look, I think that Byron Young was the one that made, and then just Rodney Garner's existence made people believe, and James Pierce followed that. And then, other players are following James Pierce, particularly Jordan Ross. So, look, I think that, and now that I'm saying that James Pierce comparison, though, this guy's more Joshua Josephs. Joshua Josephs was a perfect compliment last year to James Pierce, wasn't he? And I think he could be, like, Joshua Josephs is not going to blow you away in the NFL. He might get a job in the NFL, but he's not a James Pierce. This guy, CJ Edwards, looks like he could be a Joshua Josephs, which is valuable.
Derek says JP was a great find. And David also points out that, remember, Jason Jenkins was a low 3-star who contributed a lot last year before FSU got him. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's potential for him to be a Jason Jenkins type or maybe a Joshua Josephs. I think that to say that he's going to be James Pierce and be projected at some point as the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft is a bit lofty. I will say this. I watched tape of him, love his motor. I think he's I think he plays hard. I think that's key. Again, I will go back to what Caleb said, and I think he was right on point. And he carry more weight because right now he is 216? Is that what he's listed as?
215. 6'3", 215, yeah.
Yeah. So he's 6'4". I mean, he needs to play at probably 245.
Yeah, so he's got to put on 30 pounds.
It's a lot of Cajun food.
That's true, but he's in Jersey, so it's a lot of. I guess I guess that's a New York pizza, right up there.
I guess. You know the great stuff about New Jersey?
Nothing.
There isn't anything great about New Jersey.
I mean, I will say I have had and I don't have a gambling problem, but I've had a lot of fun in Atlantic City in my time. I'll say that.
I don't have a gambling.
But I know, right? Atlantic City is fun. But what I'll say about CJ Edwards, and again, he's 6'4", 215. Some of this, though, is he's going to put on natural weight where he won't lose his athleticism, right? Because he's going to grow just going into senior year in high school, isn't he?
Well, so, you would certainly think so. Yes.
Yeah, and that's going to be natural athleticism, the natural growth that's not going to slow down his athleticism. So he could get to 220, 225 before he's on campus next year. And if that happens, then things are looking a lot better for him. Right now, he is Tennessee, I believe.
It would almost be hard at 6'4", 215 for him not to put on 10 pounds just naturally. You've been there. The weight just seems to come on a little bit easier when the older you get. So I think naturally he'll come in at 225.
Oh, I totally agree. And so that's where I think, and so like you could see him move up to a 4-star next year. He's 6'4", 225, and his athleticism hasn't changed. 247 Sports the composite's going to up him to a 4-star. He's the 8th commitment in Tennessee's class right now. Tennessee has the 6th ranked overall class for 2026. That's going to change. It's so early. You can't celebrate recruiting rankings this early out, but
you know how he would be a guaranteed 4-star?
How?
If Butch Jones was still the coach and he screamed and yelled and cussed out recruiting reporters to give him another star. That's exactly. He'd have another star this morning. Okay, Timothy asked, what do you think about the new hire as Josh Heupel adds to his coaching staff? We will get to that as the show is represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. Give me 2 minutes and we'll get into Josh Heupel's newest coaching hire on Off the Hook Sports.
It's a new year, a new day, and Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln Knoxville.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Ginger Power, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
I think a record number of live viewers in here since football season, so we greatly appreciate that. If you don't mind, click that thumbs up button, the like button, that helps us grow, and we love our listeners. Absolutely love our listeners. I hear some people call into other shows. I know you have the text box here, but I hear some people call into other shows. I'm like, what? Why are you taking that call? Hound Dogs of Knoxville.
Okay, Jerry Green.
What? What? Hound Dogs. I don't play golf during the
Why don't you tell? Do you tell those callers to go to Kmart?
I do. Go ahead and rent your VHS tape at Kmart. He's turning into the old guy from Family Guy. Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. HDKnoxville.com. Get your fat ass back here. Champions look good in orange. HDKnoxville.com. If you're a member of the channel, you can join right here. It's very easy. Then we will hook you up with a Hound Dogs of Knoxville gift certificate. You can shop online. Use the promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED for 10% off. And you'll get a gift certificate worth $20 just for joining. It's only $5 to join. So why not? We certainly appreciate you. Again, please hit that like button. It is time for, and we will get to the coach here in just a moment that was hired. And Caleb has some strong opinions on it. So do I. But first, it is time for the stat of the day. I have no idea why that played like that. And I can't turn it off. It doesn't restart, Caleb. Okay, let's go to this day in Tennessee football history.
This day in Tennessee sports history.
It's cool, baby. It's cool.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun, Off the Hook Sports.
This day in Tennessee sports history is?
On this day, back in 2022, so just 3 years ago now, Tennessee basketball beat third-ranked Auburn 67-62 at home. That ended what was at the time a 6-game losing streak to the Tigers dating back to January of 2017. Bruce Pearl had just effectively owned Rick Barnes. And it was just for a couple of stats on that real quick. In 29, in that 6-game winning streak, in 2018, Auburn won at Tennessee, which cost Tennessee the outright SEC regular season title. In 2019, Auburn won against Tennessee in the final week of the regular season, which cost Tennessee a shot at sharing the regular season title. Then a week later, Auburn beat Tennessee in the SEC tournament title, which cost Tennessee the shot at the SEC tournament. So like Auburn was just like ruining Tennessee at every chance, at every goal they could try to get. And so getting that win over Auburn 67-62 back in 2022 was huge as a confidence booster for them. And since then, Tennessee's actually held their own with Auburn finally in Bruce Pearl.
You know what's interesting to me is you would think when a coach leaves, especially the way he left, that he would be despised, talking about Bruce Pearl, but he really hasn't been. There's almost this lamenting of what would he have done at Tennessee. And Caleb, I don't know that that's as much of a debate anymore, but there's never been this vitriol for Bruce Pearl. I mean, I still think Tennessee fans, maybe that's a poll question, I think Tennessee fans would rather beat Kentucky than Bruce Pearl, their former coach at Auburn.
I think Tennessee fans were upset at the firing of Bruce Pearl because Tennessee fans felt the violation, even though Bruce Pearl lied about it, and you don't lie, it's no longer a violation anymore. And they felt that Mike Hamilton could have fought harder for him in front of the NCAA. And
Yeah, you just can't lie. You know, I mean, you just can't lie to your boss's face and the governing body of your boss either. I mean, you can't.
I mean, it's how many people get in trouble for
the cover up.
The cover up. I mean, like we go back to, I mean, I'll just joke about it, but the impeachment of Bill Clinton, like nobody ever got mad that he had an affair. Everybody knew Bill Clinton was unfaithful, but it was like, why did he lie about it? You know, it was just like when people hit scandals and they lie about it, it's like people forgive the scandal way more than they forgive the lie. But yeah, I agree. The only thing that bothers me about Bruce Pearl is it's actually based on things you've told me. It seemed like privately, even though publicly he always said positive things, he seemed to privately feed the narrative that he was wrongly fired at Tennessee and did not mind undercutting future coaches about it. And then he said a few years ago, he's like, you know, I took it personally when I came back to Tennessee. I really wanted to beat them. And I'm like, you act like you were wronged. I mean, it still was on you.
Oh, well, no, he thinks he was wronged. I mean, there's no question. He thinks he was wrong. Someone representing him, and I'm not going to exactly say who it is, but it might have the initials BP, called and said, what would you think about a column on Mike Hamilton's biggest gaffes, biggest mistakes as athletic director? The person didn't even know that might rhyme with loose, but this person didn't know that I was covering recruiting for ESPN and I wasn't working for the News Sentinel again. I was like, where would Bruce Pearl's firing rank? And this person said, well, definitely number one.
So was this guy Colin pretending to be somebody else? Was he like, this is definitely not Bruce Pearl calling you? But no, I think this
I've had that happen too on a post-game talk show when we were covering the basketball finals. I've had that. A man had a very, I can't remember his name, but he had a very distinct, deep, gravelly voice. And if you do this long enough, Caleb, you'll realize that you hear voices a little bit more particular than other people. And I knew it was him. And I texted him during the show and I said, you can't call defending Jerry Green with your voice. Everybody knows it's you. And he was like, oh, it wasn't me. Saw him at practice the next day. Swore up and down it wasn't him. I still believe in my heart of hearts that was him. There's no question.
That's like when Kevin Durant got caught creating a burner account defending Kevin Durant.
Look at Steve. Steve says, I like Pearl and I hope he comes back to UT someday.
Not happening.
No,
not happening. It wasn't happening. And honestly, the rumors when they were fueled in 2014, I think there was a lot of really poor journalism done by a lot of people in Knoxville media. It was a low moment because a lot of people kept hinting that he was coming back. And the ones that were being rational on this, I'll give Wes Rucker a shout out, was getting so much hate from everybody. Like, how dare you? Tennessee would hire Bruce Pearl back. And he's like, it's not happening. They can't do it. And of course, they couldn't hire him back.
Yeah, Papa J says, we need to have someone offensive-minded after Barnes retires.
I'm not so sure Barnes isn't offensive-minded. Like, I think Rick Barnes coaches a certain way, but I mean, he's not like Jamie Dixon or even Conzo Martin, or he's not like just focus on defense and see where it goes. I mean, he does coach offense. I think he grinds so hard, just sometimes you're going to have off nights on offense with the way he coaches.
No, I can roll with that. Now, let's get to what the H, but first, a poll question. Caleb, what do you got?
All right, so
it was the best Cajun food. Did we put that up?
Oh, we did not put that up.
Oh
Sorry.
my goodness. Best Cajun food. Creole, jambalaya, etouffee, or red beans and rice.
What the H?
Wait, no gumbo?
I never worked hard on anything. What a cool life.
For real? The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, so Tennessee has another coach on its staff, as clearly Josh Heupel is taking advantage of the lack of a rule for assistant coaches and the amount you can have. Now, you can only have so many on the road recruiting, but if you want to, you could have 50 assistant coaches. So this newest one, though, is not exactly blowing my skirt up. Tell me about Seth Littrell, who will literally be joining UT as an offensive analyst.
Yeah, so Tennessee has hired Seth Littrell to come in as an offensive analyst. Seth Littrell, for those who don't know, was a member of Josh Heupel's, was a member of the 2000 Oklahoma Sooners team that won the national title. He and Josh Heupel were both captains of that team. They were in the backfield together. He was a fullback. Josh Heupel was the quarterback. And look, I'm just going to say it. This feels like Josh Heupel going for another yes man. And I just don't see any value. Seth Littrell was just fired as Oklahoma's offensive coordinator middle of the season last year for massive ineffective production. He spent 7 years at North Texas as a head coach. They averaged the 47th best offense, which that's not bad. But Dave, if you're an offensive-minded coach at a group of 5 school, you should be having top 10 offenses, right? In that situation.
I agree. I mean, this doesn't do a lot for me. And I like, let's look at the Harb and Chop hire. At least you could say, I don't know his X's and O's. They may be great, they may not, but he is a daft recruiter. I don't know that Littrell necessarily is. He was the head coach at North Texas from 2016 to 2022. He was an even 44-44, right down the middle. I just don't know. He was fired after North Texas went 7-6. And then spent the 2023 season as an analyst at Oklahoma. I think it goes back to yes men. And I believe that Josh Heupel, and I've written this before, and some have disagreed with me, I believe that Josh Heupel is paranoid from what happened at his time at Oklahoma, where he was essentially fired as the offensive coordinator after being forced to run an offense he wasn't too fond of. I think he's still paranoid. And I think he's worried stuff is going to get out. I don't know if it's more that or yes men, but I think it's probably a combination of both, Caleb.
So why even hire a guy, though, that, I mean, what's he going to bring? This seems like a friendship move by Josh Heupel. What is he going to bring to the table to you? Honestly, I mean, say what you want about Nick Saban hiring Butch Jones, which seems stupid at the time as an analyst, but Butch Jones was well-versed in the zone read, smash mouth spread offense because he worked under Rich Rodriguez and Brian Kelly and had worked with Mike DeBoard. And that's not something Saban was experienced with. So Butch Jones could come and give Saban a different perspective. Dave, don't you hire analysts to give you a different perspective when you're like looking on from how you look at the offense? Isn't that the whole reason to hire an analyst?
Yeah, you should. That's why, Lane Kiffin was hired as an analyst or a consultant for about a month before he eventually got the Alabama OC job. And yeah, he came in with a whole different set of tools, so to speak. I mean, he was not the run it down the A and B gap over and over and over and hope that your defense wins the game. He was about throwing the ball around, Caleb, and they needed a breath of fresh air. I wonder how they finish their dynasty, their run, if they don't have Lane Kiffin in place.
That's a really good question. I mean, Saban evolved like that with Lane Kiffin. And the thing we really learned with Nick Saban is he's actually a very fast learner too, because he picked up a lot of the stuff Lane Kiffin wanted, and Saban learned how to start running the offense himself that way. Look, is Josh Heupel, is this going to be his undoing? Honestly, I mean, he constantly he promoted Alec Gablin from within. He promoted Kelsey Pope from within. He promoted Joey Halsey, who provides nothing extra of value. Josh Heupel's two most
in all fairness, Pope and Ablin have done well.
They have, but what I mean by that is, and I used to praise Josh Heupel for this, but I look back, his most successful offenses came with Jeff Levy and Alex Golish. Both of them came from wildly different backgrounds than Josh Heupel. Well, not Jeff Levy too much, but Alex Golish did. They clearly brought different perspectives to Josh Heupel when he brought him in, and it created a much more dynamic offense. Who's on the offense now that's going to do that? Like, who on the offense is going to bring a different perspective? Seth Littrell's only unique. Here's Seth Littrell's coaching tree, who he's coached under, Dave. Mike Leach, Mark Mangino. By the way, two people Josh Heupel played under, so he has their experience. Mike Stoops, which is Bob Stoops' brother, so it's not like that's anything special. The only extra sizzle that Seth Littrell brings is he coached under Larry Fedora for 2 years. But anybody who knows North Carolina during that time knows that was Larry Fedora's offense, and the offensive coordinators were in name only. You didn't really take anything from Larry Fedora during that time.
Yeah, Unsung said, was this a pressure hire? Unsung, I'm not following there. What exactly do you mean by that? If you can give me a little bit of clarification. And then Derek, Josh H is not a we hire, we fire guy. He hires to promote within or send to a higher role. No, but Nick Saban was not a we fire guy. Guys just left because it was so tough. I think Tennessee needs a little bit of that. Maybe a little bit more toughness. And if your head coach is paranoid, that's not good. Could this be Josh Heupel's undoing? As a matter of fact, Caleb, I will go ahead and say that I thought that this morning, and I've thought that since the 3 assistant coaching hires were named. Ultimately, I don't think it'll be Josh Heupel getting himself fired. I think he's a great offensive mind, but it may be his assistant coaches and lack of production that gets him fired.
I agree. If anything happens, it'll be the lack of production. I mean, he doesn't have another voice in the room, and he's running a system. And I want to be clear about this, guys. This is why the Heupel-Steve Spurrier comparisons made no sense looking back. One guy just runs. Steve Spurrier called offenses play to play. He was the creative mind. He called it literally play to play. Heupel has a system similar to Tom Osborne, where he has formations and there's about 3 or 4 options of a play to run based on how the defense is going. That's what he does. There's no creativity beyond that. And it just doesn't feel like he's bothering to add any. And I do think that's kind of an issue long term. I think he's too confident in himself and what he does. This very much reminds me, guys, and I'll just bring the name up, rest in peace, but this is how an offense and a program gets a ceiling. Mike Leach, Dave, he had a ceiling, didn't he? I mean, he had a floor, but he had a ceiling with the offenses he ran. And it was never going to go beyond that ceiling. Now, people say, oh, what if he got the extra talent? What if he was ever able to get the schools to get the talent? I don't think it would have mattered. I think he was so set on the system, the limitations would have been there.
Yep. So Unsung, with some clarification, was Heupel told to hire someone? Like, was this someone else's hire? So he makes a safe hire, just thinking wildly. If that's the case, and I'm not ruling that out, if that's the case and Danny White is phoning Josh Heupel that you have to make a coaching hire, then this program is on thin ice.
If an athletic director ever gets involved with staff moves, then Josh Heupel's in way bigger trouble than you realize. Now, the athletic director at Ohio State got involved with Ryan Day's moves last year and forced him to hire Chip Kelly, and it worked out. So, I mean, sometimes that can work out, but typically that doesn't work out.
Yep. All right. So this from Timothy, a super chat, which goes to Quincy Calhoun's college fund. You want to read that out from Timothy?
Yeah, it says Heupel's offense is not creative and too darn predictable. Timothy, you are absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Okay.
It's,
I think that's a little oversimplification, to be real honest with you. Not to disagree with you both, but that's what I'm going to do. You had a quarterback who wasn't very good 2 years ago, and you had a quarterback that was young last year. So give us an update on our poll question, Caleb, because we might just change that up.
The best Cajun food is jambalaya, gumbo, etouffee, and gumbo wins at 50%.
Okay. Gumbo wins at 50%. Oyster or shrimp? Got to go oyster. All right. So
shrimp. I don't like oyster. Sorry. Never have.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So, all right. Let's put that as a poll question, new poll question. And that is Josh Heupel's offense is innovative or stale? Just those two options is what I want to do. The show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. Give me 2 minutes off the hook sports. And
Well, wait, let's
let's
stay on this for a minute, just real quick. Because I wanted to share just point. I want to add to Derek's point on this, but like, well, actually, we'll get to Derek's point when we get back. But I just want to add that Seth Littrell, I think. What about this? Will Seth Littrell make Josh Heupel's offense more innovative or stale? I think it's not going to change anything about the offense. Do you?
No, I don't think it'll change anything. That's why I would prefer to go with just is it stale or innovative? Because this time last year hasn't been that long ago. We were having the discussion that he's Steve Spurrier, and now we're having the discussion that he's Mike Leach. That's a pretty precipitous fall.
It is.
And
totally
I'm
agree.
curious what percentage of our fans think that the offense is just stale. I don't believe that's the case. I don't, because I believe Tennessee's offense has had two quarterbacks that were either not ready or not good enough. And if he gets the right cat in there under center, I think they'll be just fine. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, broadcasting from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. 2 minutes off the hook sports.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas. Your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing? Therapeutic? Absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7
guy with a lot of jobs, but this one is the most important.
This is not government work. As such, I treat it with care and attention.
Until someone else calls. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, let's go back to the chat box as Timothy with a super chat for me in this case, but it'll go to Quincy Calhoun and his college fund. How old is your son now? Almost a year.
Turns 9 months next week.
Okay. I swear you told me 9 months, 3 months ago. Still going back to that. You don't believe you did, do you?
No, I've never told you 9 months.
Okay. All right. Hooker, his scheme is stale, and his option routes without the option just runs 20 yards or sideline to sideline and a couple run plays. And if you don't have the players, you have stale plays. So, Caleb, is it more about Tennessee's players, or is it more about Tennessee's scheme? I think players.
I think it's not either. I think it's the lack of sizzle added to the scheme that's necessary, which is why I wanted to get to it's like a pizza that's been in the fridge for 3 days. Not bad, but not as good as if it. That's a good one. That's a good one. I'm actually pulled that one out. I want to pull up the one that Derek had earlier that I think is a great one, which is this one. Josh Heupel's like the guy you play on Madden that has his 10 favorite plays and runs it down your throat or you lock him up. That's exactly right. How many people have you played on Madden, Dave, that like run like 5 or 6 plays?
Jonathan Crompton.
And it
That's true.
And here's the reason.
He was up 21-0 at half, and I came back and won 20.
And here's the reason.
And he quit.
Against the computer, like when you play the computer, it works, right? Those plays work every time you figure out how to outsmart the computer. But you can't outsmart a person. So then you actually have to fully open up your playbook, and nobody can. So that is literally the best example I've seen yet. Josh Heupel's a Madden player that uses like 6 plays. I've told you guys the difference between him and Spurrier. You know this, Dave. Steve Spurrier literally coached like an expert esports guy, right? Like an expert like Madden player. That's how he coached football.
I still say it was absolutely bizarre how he was able to see coverages. And I know he had feedback from the press box or the coach's box, but I don't think he trusted any of them like he trusted his own. And I still don't understand how he did that. If you've ever been on the side, I'm sure you have, sideline of a football game during the game, I don't know what the hell is going on. I mean,
no, I don't either.
It's really difficult to see what's going on, but he was able to do that somehow. I still think that's bizarre. So give us an update on the poll question. And Dan, you're right. 9 months does go by fast. It was just about this time 9 months ago that Caleb was conceiving the baby.
No, that would have been 18 months ago. But
that would have been 18 months ago. There's another one on the way. Let us know. All right,
so
Caleb.
Josh Heupel's offense is innovative or stale? You want the results?
I do want the results.
68% say stale.
Maybe a column. As a matter of fact, that will definitely be a column. Let's move forward here. I want to let that simmer for a bit. Now, it could be like you said, pizza that's been in the fridge for 3 days. It could be like chili, which is better the second day, is it not?
Yes, or it could be like well-made fried chicken, which is better a few days later. If you don't like cold fried chicken, or if you think cold fried chicken is worse than when you first get it, you haven't had good cold fried chicken. You're too white. That's the truth. You've been around too many white people. If you don't think cold fried chicken can be good.
Okay, they're not going to be a sponsor. I'll go ahead and tell you, but there's a place called Super Chick, and it's like they're trying to serve up fried chicken and waffles to the suburbs crowd. If you want to say Caucasian or not, whatever the case may be, but they don't do it right, and it will get you very ill.
You gotta go to the hoods to get good fried chicken. You do.
Completely agree.
You gotta go to the hoods.
Hot or cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Why does this keep doing this, Caleb?
I don't know.
I don't know either. Give us an update on the poll question one more time. And as I remind people that portions of the program are brought to you by Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. QualityTirePros.com. Also want to thank our friends. I get to stop by there today, I believe. Rick Terry Jewelry Design. Man, they want to be your jeweler. Looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. RickTerryJewelry.com. I guess at the end of the day, Caleb, you're telling me that Josh Heupel's recent struggles the past 2 years are more about schemed players.
Yes. Josh Heupel's offense is stale 70%. Basically, the offense was fried chicken made by those darn honkies. And
brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning.
Where do you stand? Hot or cold? Brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. Integrity matters. 50 years in East Tennessee. cityheatandair.com. On Off the Hook Sports.
All right, hot or cold, we preview Tennessee's tight ends. Let's go ahead and make it a poll question. Which tight end are you the most excited about? Mine's Ethan Davis, and it's going to continue to be because I think his ceiling is so incredibly high. But you can't rule out Miles Kitselman, who has recently been named one of the top 10 tight ends by Pro Football Focus. So Kitselman is just kind of that quiet guy lurking around. He's a tough player. I like a lot about him, but I still think that if Ethan Davis doesn't bloom, then this coaching staff has an issue. So let's go ahead and break down the tight ends. And Caleb, I'll ask you, are you hot or cold on Ethan Davis? So to me, to be hot on Ethan Davis, to set up some parameters, you have to think that he's going to be at least a borderline all SEC player, right?
Yes. And I am hot on Ethan Davis. I'm sizzling on Ethan Davis.
Miles Kitselman, I think we would both agree we're hot, right?
Yeah, I'm hot on Miles Kitselman too. And I think this is here's how I think this is going to work. I don't think he's going to alternate tight ends on drives. I think he's going to use Ethan Davis all the way up until he gets into the red zone, and then he's going to switch to Miles Kitselman. I think that's how he's going to operate the tight ends.
Well, but that would crush their tempo. You don't want to sub. You give the other side a chance to sub. I don't know.
But the tempo stops the minute there's an incomplete pass. So or something like that, maybe you're right. But there's usually, even as they run tempo, there's usually at least one play where things stop. And so that's what I was saying.
Hot or cold, Jack Van Dorselaer?
Cold. I'm not as high on him. I think that he is just a body. I think that he is probably going to transfers. I know he was a four-star out of Texas. He's a guy that'll be ready early, but I don't think his ceiling's that high. I'm just going to say it. So I'm a little cold on him. I think he can be a little overrated.
I've got no argument with that. I'm cold on him. And then our fourth tight end that we want to get to, and we are going to get to the young man out of California that you just referenced on the message board. But let's take a look at Deshaun Braum. Hot or cold?
I'm actually hot on this guy. This kid comes out of Kansas. I think he is very underrated. He was a four-star. I think Deshaun Braum is the only reason really I'm cold on Jack Van Dorselaer is because there's already depth at the tight end spot, and his ceiling is, I think, a little low. Deshaun Braum's ceiling is through the roof. And so I think he's a very underrated player in this class. He ran a 4.48 40 and has a 40-inch vertical according to his high school coach, and he's a tight end at 6'5", 235. This is a ridiculously athletic guy.
Pretty good. And I want to throw another name out there, and I don't know if we're necessarily hot or cold on Cole Harrison, but as he enters year number 2 with the program, I'm at least lukewarm. They made sure to play him early last year, and I hear the coaching staff absolutely loves him. He was just a 3-star prospect, but very athletic. And sometimes if you're in California, you don't get the same ratings because you're going against good competition. And frankly, the state of California doesn't take college football recruiting as seriously as the South. So I think you get some analysts that are just kind of okay. But Cole Harrison, I'm actually hot on him. And by definition of that, he played in 2 games last year. I think he'll play several games this year.
He could be a change of pace and be like the 3rd tight end. I wouldn't be surprised. He's 6'5", 227 pounds. Almost seems like more of a like a tweener between a receiver and tight end. But there's all of a sudden, Dave, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, it seems like there's been more room in recent years in football for a tweener, a guy that may be too small for a tight end but too slow for a receiver. They still seem to find room for them in the slot now, right? And I think that I'll just be honest. I think that Cole Harrison, for those who don't know California, like the entire high school scene in California, everybody runs a pro-style offense. Everybody in California runs a pro-style offense. And they're utilizing tight ends a lot more in the slot. So I think his success out there could be underrated.
Maybe we can have Casey Clausen on to talk about this young man. I don't know if he's played him or not. We'll look into that, as Casey's always nice to come on. Again, it's Hot or Cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
There's your best. What did Game No Bueno have to say about your comment about cold chicken?
I tuned in and Caleb was trying to convince me that if I don't like fried chicken, I'm too white. Or cold fried chicken, excuse me. I said the fried chicken you've had has been too white. I'm just saying, yeah, that's all I'm saying. Hey, I say this all, you know, it's funny. I'm from Memphis. You know, Memphis is known for barbecue and everybody knows they're known for ribs. And I am big on that. I don't eat ribs outside of the city of Memphis. However, we're low-key known for wing places too. It's just nobody knows about them because you got to go to the hood to get the wing places. And
I know where those places are.
It is the Memphis wings are the best kept secret in America. If you go straight to Orange Mound and you can get some of the best wings, they're better than Atlanta wings, honestly.
Last time I was in Memphis, I ate the same plate of food at the same restaurants in the corner of Beale Street 3 times. It was the ribs and catfish combo. And I just came back and I said, just give me that again.
Oh, were you at Blue City Cafe?
Yes.
Yes, I love Blue City. I love that's where I go for the catfish. I go to Blue City for the catfish. I go to typically Barbecue Shop for the ribs or Cozy Corners. Those are my top 2. And I go to a place called Ching's for the wings, and that's in Orange Mound.
All right. So on our text box, General Ursa says, yes, go get Casey, favorite quarterback. All right, I will. I'll text him this afternoon. We'll see if we can get him early this time.
Before we move on, Dave, I feel like it's kind of an SEC story, so we got to talk about this. Did you hear about that Ole Miss sorority girl yesterday that was trending on Twitter?
I haven't yet. Let me ask you as we wrap up Hot or Cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. Are you hot or cold on Tennessee's tight end room compared to previous years?
As a whole, I am actually hot on Tennessee's tight end room. Extremely hot, honestly. I think that the only reason Miles Kitselman wasn't more dominant last year is they had to alternate some guys early to see who was better, like a better gamer. And now Miles Kitselman's going to get all the first team reps this year with Ethan Davis. So I am really, really, really hot on the tight ends. I got to be honest. I'm extremely hot on them. I told you guys, the only reason I'm low on Jack Van Dorslier is I think he's just not going to make it into the rotation.
Well, but are you hot or cold if Tennessee's offense has to rely on the tight end? That's not what a lot of fans signed up for.
No, it's not. But we just talked about how Josh Heupel's offense is stale. But like part of that is you got to change with the times. If part of changing with the times means using the tight ends more, then so be it. I mean, I will agree with you. He adapted last year running the ball more. So I got no issue with it.
Okay. Dry rub or wet? Eric asks.
Dry rub, like what the heck? Dry rub, like every time.
It's wet. All right, new poll question. There we go.
No.
Why do you? That makes no sense.
You don't get Adam. If you want good Memphis barbecue, you need to travel east about 90 minutes. If you're referring to Bozo's, Bozo's ain't that great. Okay, sorry. And it's been around for a long time, but that's in Mason, Tennessee. But dry rub all day. I want my ribs dry. I want them completely dry.
Stat of the day brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates. Just go to Facebook, Sports Treasures TN, Sports Treasures TN. Stat of the day off the hook sport. It's still playing that stupid song. Caleb, what's our new poll question? Give us an update on the old.
How do you prefer your rib? Which tight end are you most excited about? Miles Kitselman and Ethan Davis tied for the lead in a plurality at 43%. Deshaun Brame at 12%. Jack Van Dorslier is at 0%.
Okay.
And now, how do you prefer your ribs? Dry rub or wet?
Is Jack Dorslier's parents not on here or something that they can vote for him? Give him a vote, Caleb. That's
sorry. Nope.
Very hurtful. Again, a record number in here is we got a lot of news to get to since football season. So please hit that like button. We greatly appreciate that. We're with you each and every weekday at 10 a.m. David says, Dave, if we get 600 yards, 10 to 12 TDs from the tight end room, then we had a great year passing.
From the tight end room as a whole, I would think you want to push it to 800 yards, but we'll see. Maybe 600 is not bad.
Oh, man. Texas brisket all day for me. You're absolutely right on that.
Yeah, but I love Texas brisket. I don't really consider it barbecue. that much. I consider it something totally different, honestly. It's just such a different thing.
All right, here we go. It is the stat of the day.
Stat of the day. They never lie. Or do they? Stat of the day. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
Steve says dry rub with sauce on the side. Dipping. Heck yeah, Steve. All right. That's where I am. But I don't care if it's just slathered in. I don't mind getting messy, too. All right. So, Caleb, what is our stat of the day? And it's brought to you by our friends at Sports Treasures.
The stat of the day is quick history lesson. I just want to, before I get to the stat of the day, Unsung says I would expect a barbecue joint named after a clown wouldn't be that good. That's in reference to Bozo's. I said Bozo's is overrated, but actually, Unsung, quick history lesson. Bozo's Barbecue started first. Bozo the Clown sued Bozo's Barbecue in 1991 over that, and it turned out that Bozo's Barbecue started first, so they played themselves. It's an interesting kind of story, yeah. So, all right. Stat of the day. We've been talking about Tennessee scoring, rebounding, their offense, and everything like that. You know what we have totally ignored, Dave?
Yes.
How much Chaz Lanier has improved at doing things not involving scoring. Last night, he had 9 rebounds. That is his 7th straight game with 5 rebounds or more, which is really impressive for a scoring guard.
No, that is impressive. I still say, do you know how many times that Dalton Connect was selected as SEC Player of the Week?
How many times?
4. How about Chaz Lanier? You want to guess how many times? It's in my column. Did you read it?
3. Yeah, it's 3.
Yeah, 3. I think Chaz Lanier is hated on again, and we talked about this yesterday, is hated on because Dalton Connect was so darn good.
I think that's very possible. I think that's very, very possible. So
cooler clown, by the way. Would that be Bozo or Homie? Do you remember Homie? Homie don't play that? Thank you, Derek.
How about John Wayne Gacy? I'm sorry. I'm going to hell. That was a bad joke.
Too soon. The show
Wasn't he called like 50 years ago?
Yeah. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, East Tennessee's largest volume dealer. Great certified pre-owned as well. The selection is incredible. Go to tedrussellford.net or tedrusselllincoln.net. You'll find it all right there. And the customer service is unbelievable. They're intent on sending you home with the perfect vehicle that you feel good about. Again, we broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is your Super Dealer, just in time for Truck Month. Save up to $5,350 on this new Ford F-150 XLT Hybrid, or save up to $7,000 on this new Ford Expedition. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford.
It's a new year, a new day, and Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln Knoxville.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
There's your pair.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
And here we go. This was a huge waste of time, like bringing a married guy to Vegas.
Then there's this guy, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
It's kind of a rite of passage to go to Dreamland's Barbecue when you go to Tuscaloosa to cover a game. So I've done that.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it kind of is. But incredibly you got to go there, but incredibly overrated.
Horrible. Horrible. My mom
very chewy. I mean, it's just, I will give them credit for one thing. And Brent Hubbs pointed this out to me probably 15 years ago. They are able to get a beer in a bottle colder than any place on earth. I don't know how they do it. It's got to be below 30 degrees, but it is incredibly tasty. And I think that's the only saving grace.
My mom moved to Tuscaloosa from Memphis, funny enough, of all places, about 17 and a half years ago, 18 and a half years ago. I remember the first time I visited her down there, she got Dreamland Barbecue to ask me what it was like. I'm like, this is the most inferior barbecue I think I've ever had. And and my mom agrees with me now. Dreamland is absolutely horrible.
Now they got a place down there, Something Moon, that's better than that. Like it's not even top 5 if you talk to Alabama natives. All right, tampering is reportedly required to compete and part of the reason spring games are being canceled. This, according to SI.com. Caleb, what can be done about tampering? Because it very well could be at the heart of Rickey Gibson entering the transfer portal.
Well, so tampering, Pete Nakos of On 3 Sports has broken this down, and he's basically done a bunch of surveys among anonymous Power 4 personnel, staffers, and NIL collectives. And he actually included prospective agents, and all of this was kind of on the condition of anonymity. Basically, what's happening is that Group of 5 schools have been tampering with each other even more than Power 5 schools have, but Power 5 schools have gotten involved. And one example that was used was former Tulane starting quarterback Darian Mensah entered the transfer portal the Monday it opened and was with Duke 2 days later. There's no word on whether or not Mensah's agents were in contact with Duke, but within 48 hours, he negotiated one of the biggest NIL deals in college football to transfer. It's very clear that he negotiated that deal to most people that he was negotiating that before he transferred. Basically, somebody said, a Big Ten staffer said, agents are calling you with a list of guys currently on rosters, and they're saying, hey, here's my list of 30 guys. Let me know if you're interested in any of them. Yeah, that's pretty much how they're doing. The agents are literally calling the schools to encourage them to tamper. And
is there any, hey, can you recall in this modern age of NIL, can you recall of anybody getting in trouble for tampering?
No, I don't know how you get in trouble.
No, because to me, it seems like it's against the law. I mean, when I called Caleb to work with me, I mean, technically, I guess that was tampering. You worked for another company. So, but it wouldn't be fair for you not to get a phone call. I mean, that's not right. That's not the American way. I think that tampering is just something that you're going to have to deal with forever. I don't know that you can ever stop that.
No, I don't really think you can. But the coaches, here's the thing. They're getting plausible deniability because according to an SEC NIL collective member, everybody's agreeing to not talk about it because everybody's doing it. And, you know, so basically the rule is, it's kind of an unwritten rule of like, what is the analogy, Dave? Like, you all have to have your feet in the boat, and if one of you steps your foot out, the whole boat sinks or flips over. And that's
so
basic.
You have to do it to compete, is what you're telling me.
You have to do it to compete, and nobody's snitching because they all have to do it. So if one person dimes somebody out, it's like put it this way, it's like gang violence. You've seen those documentaries. Like, nobody's snitching on a rival gang member or anything like that, because like they all know they're in this fight with each other. And it's like, if one person does it, the whole operation could blow up. And that's what's happening right now with tampering. Basically the agents have figured out, here's what the SEC collective said. The agents have, and I also said, the agents have figured out the model and football having 2 portal windows, which actually exacerbates the problem because the kids are constantly in play. It's kind of nonstop. And the players and coaches have plausible deniability, because if the agents are facilitating everything, literally the players and the coaches can be like, well, I didn't talk to the kid. They can literally say that now. And the coaches are letting the agents do all the dirty work.
All right, Caleb, here's the problem I have with this is that Josh Heupel's, well, let me start with this. Do you believe Rickey Gibson was tampered with?
Yes. Oh, I'm not. Okay, put it this way. I'm not sure. There's a strong possibility Rickey Gibson is just playing the, you guys need me, so I can negotiate a higher contract right now.
I think everybody worth a darn is being tampered with. Like, literally everybody. I mean, if I can, and I used to cover recruiting, if I could find a young man on social media and that sorts of things, it's not like the coaches can't. I mean, you can get a hold of anybody if you want to, Caleb. And I think Rickey Gibson was tampered with. I think every significant player on Tennessee's roster has been tampered with at some point. You develop these relationships, and now the coaches know not to give up because of the new transfer portal rules. I think tampering is just a way of life. Now, tie it to why spring games are getting canceled. As I remind you, the UPS store, Arden Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. The link right down below. So how's this canceling spring games?
So basically tampering is canceling spring games because the fact of the matter is, because of the 2 portal windows, there's a fear that like these spring games, which are more out in the open, is allowing more access basically to the players and allowing people to see more things. So it's basically, if everybody's tampering, then when you have a spring game and that's an open market for anybody to be able to come and watch your guys, you're basically just telling agents, hey, come target our guys.
Who all has canceled their spring game?
Not sure all the schools that have canceled spring.
Well, I mean, not all, but who are any big names out there? I mean, does Tennessee do this at some point? I will go ahead and go on record. This will be Tennessee's last spring game. I firmly believe that. I know Josh Heupel hates it. Most every coach hates it. And Derek brings up a great point with Gibson. I bet it was FSU calling. I do too, because of the ties there. And listen, you could just go to Squirrel White and say, do you care to give me Rickey Gibson's number? That's how easy it is.
Oh, yeah, no. So basically the high profile ones are Texas, USC, Nebraska. NC State was the most recent to do it. You're looking at, I believe, Kansas, Temple, Colorado, and Kentucky. They've all canceled their spring games. And look, like they're all giving different reasons, but it's like very obvious that everybody's worried about tampering. And Matt Rule basically said, Nebraska said it was for some weird reason, but then Matt Rule came out and said, like, his exact quote was, the word tampering doesn't exist anymore. It's just absolute free, open, common market. I don't want these guys all being able to watch our guys. That's what he said about having a spring game at Nebraska. Basically, they don't want scouts or agents or recruiters from other teams seeing what their players can do in the spring game, because this portal window that opens after the spring. I guess the best way you can, no pun intended, tamp down on this, I don't know if you can, but do you close the portal window after the spring, Dave? Do you just say you got the winner and that's it?
How can you do that? Because legally, you can't tell somebody that, no, you can't call somebody about a job.
Yeah, no, you're right.
There has to be a union, and it goes back to the column that I wrote. I mean, there absolutely has to be a union. And I know people don't like to hear about that, but that's where they have to go. And let me get your thoughts on the message board, the chat box, whatever we call it. And that is, do you care about the spring game? Because I don't think that most people do. And I don't, but Caleb, I'd suggested maybe a skills challenge or something like that. But that would actually that would showcase your athleticism more.
Well, there's been talk on, you're right. I mean, you're right. It's, and that's the problem. There's been talk recently that college football is opting in, and there's encouragement that coaches are considering an NFL style OTA as a replacement for spring games. CBS reports, Brandon Marcello of CBS actually reported that about 2 weeks ago, that basically college football programs are kind of going to use this like OTAs in the NFL. And that's what they kind of want their spring games to be. And I mean, I don't even think they want their players out giving out. And this is the other part with NIL. And this is the crazy part, Dave. Players got to be more visible to get the NIL money, show up for this, show up for that, whatever. Doesn't more visibility open the door for create more avenues for people to contact them?
Well, I don't know that if they show up at a shoe store and they talk about how awesome those Reeboks are, that a college coach is going to say, oh, I've got to have him on my team. I'm not exactly sure what you're driving at there. I think ultimately it's going to be play on the field. But here's the other thing. You realize we are so close, and I'm calling it right now. We are so close to a major scandal in college football. Because here's what's going to happen. And for those that aren't old enough, Ron Zook was involved when he was a coach at Tennessee of sending Tennessee's playbook to Gainesville and blah, blah, blah. So this stuff can't happen. These coaches do talk. Here's what's going to happen. Either a reporter that covers practice, what little bit of practice you were able to see, is going to say to another coach at another school, hey, this guy's a real standout player for you. You might want to reach out to him. Or you're going to see the practice tape turned over to another recruiter at another school. Don't tell me that can't happen, because I knew someone that was tied in with the videographer at a school, and he got tape of practice every day. So that's not outside the realm of possibility, Caleb. And then you're able to scout these guys, and you know exactly who to call.
Yeah.
I mean, is that a conspiracy thing, or is that real?
No, I think that's absolutely real. You're absolutely going to see teams like one. You've already kind of seen that. I don't know if you know, but Bobby Petrino, when he was at Louisville years ago, when Dave Clawson was at Wake Forest, I think Bobby Petrino had a disgruntled staff member. There was a disgruntled staff member at Wake Forest that Bobby Petrino basically put on his payroll to start sending him Wake Forest playbooks, allegedly. I mean, and he says he wasn't involved, but consider the source. Bobby Petrino is one of the biggest liars in the history of college football. So I think that, look, you're going to see a lot more of that. I totally agree with you going forward. And here's the crazier part. With tampering, and this is even more insane, what about coaches being contacted? I mean, the only thing I'll say about tampering that we wonder about, Dave, is tampering with coaches has been going on for an even longer time. I mean, how many times have coaches been at one school, but they're in contact with another school during the middle of the season?
All the time.
All the time. Coordinators, assistants. I mean, so that's why it doesn't worry me too much. I mean, guys, go back and look at history. Look back at the history of the 1969 Gator Bowl between Tennessee and Florida, which Florida won. Doug Dickey took the Florida job the next day. There's a lot of people suspicious about what happened in that Gator Bowl.
Yeah, he was definitely okay. David says the spring game is for the fans. It helps drive fan interest. This may kill some new fan interest with canceling these games. Totally agree. The spring game is the game that you went to for a lot of fans if you didn't have enough money to have tickets in the fall. And you could go in for $5. And back in the day, they even had a ball day, or I can't even remember what they called it, but they had like a autograph signing. Did you ever go to one of those things, Caleb, when you were over there? Did you ever cover one of those?
One time. It
was actually kind of neat.
But see, again, that's a way to just open the door for agents to contact the players.
Yeah, that's dead as a doornail.
Well, and I want to address what Timothy said, because Timothy, this is because it's a super chat and we appreciate it, Timothy. But this is something Jimmy talked about, because you're saying, Timothy, then since it's pay to play, put them on a 2 to 3 year contract. Timothy, on principle, you're right. The problem is if you're doling out 2 to 3 year contracts and no other school is doing that, then you're not going to be able to get the player, because players aren't going to pick you if other schools aren't doing it. The only option in that point, Dave, is to offer 2 to 3 year contracts that are exorbitantly bigger than what any other school is offering.
Yeah.
And
I think we're talking about 50% more or so.
Yeah,
that's
exactly
what I was suggesting earlier. Like if a player's getting $500,000 from basically every school in the SEC, you say sign a 2-3 year contract for $750,000. That I think is doable. But again, you're getting into how much money is actually out there. I mean, there's a notion out there that Tennessee's tapped out as far as its budget because of NIL. If that's the case, then they're not going to be the team that's doing it. And other schools are probably in that situation as well.
Yeah, I agree. And, look, if they could up more money, they would. I mean, that's where you get the talent fees and things like that. So guys, this is going to be, look, this is just how it's going to work out long term. And I mean, Heupel was already secretive with stuff he was running anyway. Now, the difference, it's funny with the OTAs, this, Dave, NFL programs are hard. I mean, NFL franchises are hardly secretive in what they're running, right? There's nothing secretive about what they're doing. That's so talent-based. It's Madden, like we talked about. If I'm right, isn't NFL coaching in-game? It's basically Madden the whole way. You're calling it play-to-play, aren't you? Pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You don't run a system, pretty much, in NFL programs. I think that I wonder if college is going that way. You can't stay secretive for too long. Put it that way. You just can't stay secretive for too long the way college is going.
Let's set our poll question. We're resetting that, and it is basically just, do you care about spring games? What are the options, Caleb?
Oh, yeah, I've already got it up. Do you care about spring games? Yes. Football, or no, you have to be secretive.
2 minutes off the hook sports coming up. Story about an Ole Miss cheerleader. Is it a cheerleader? Sorority girl that you won't want to miss. 2 minutes with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, off the hook sports.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is your Super Dealer, just in time for Truck Month. Save up to $5,350 on this new Ford F-150 XLT Hybrid, or save up to $7,000 on this new Ford Expedition. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Ginger Power, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Timothy on a super chat goes to Quincy Calhoun's college fund. Last year was shoddy. How did the spring game the donors got the tickets, and screw the common folks is my thought how they did it. Yeah, I would say this. If Josh Heupel called me and said, Dave, I have a question for you. What should I do about the spring game? You're pretty versed in public relations. I would say, well, Josh, you called the right person, first of all. And then I would add this. Don't even do a spring game if you're going to half-a it.
Yeah, because everybody can tell.
Yeah, I mean, Caleb had a cold. I've been sick before, and we've had the discussion in the morning. I don't think it's best to roll out a product that's not at its best. Plus, you add the secretive thing in. Let's get an update on the poll question before we get to a Ole Miss sorority girl.
Do you care about Tennessee spring game? 60% say yes, football, and 40% say no, you have to be secretive.
So 40% wouldn't even care?
Wouldn't even care. And I'm with the 40%, quite honestly. So,
and that's with our rabid sports fans. What's it like with just the regular Joe?
Probably even higher. I mean, who really pays attention to the spring games outside of the rabid fans anyway?
I just
people with young kids that they like to take to see some football. That's the only other ones.
Yep. All right. And then another comment from Unsung. Spring games were also for the players who wouldn't see hardly any playing time during the season too.
But that's spring practice.
Yeah, but that's spring practice as well. And David says they need to rein these NIL deals or will completely kill schools' athletic budgets and eventually shut down major college sports like baseball, softball, and women's basketball. I'm not so sure that's not the case. All right. An Ole Miss sorority girl did what?
So this shouldn't be a football story, but it reached the college football rounds and made it to Josh Pate's show yesterday of all places because it's an SEC story. And if you were searching SEC football news yesterday, this was the most trending thing on Twitter. So we're going to cover it here, guys, because we're going to have a little fun. We're going to give credit to Magageddon, who on Twitter screenshotted a Snapchat that revealed a series of text messages that shows a sorority woman apparently cheated on her boyfriend with his father.
Oh.
And wait, but here's the crazy part. The boyfriend is staying with him. So
keep it in the family.
I mean, very Mississippi, right?
Really am. Who else is stunned on the message board that this didn't turn into a Lane Kiffin story? I am literally stunned because Caleb had this. And I was like, I'm not even going to read it because I want you to pitch it to me on the air. And I knew that this was.
Well, I was wanting to have fun with this. I mean, question: has a sorority girl cheated on her boyfriend at Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin to this point?
Seriously?
But Lane Kiffin is in a very happy relationship, in a very healthy, monogamous, happy relationship.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, that's what you want to tell yourself. Go ahead. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. I think I'll have some news about Ted Russell tomorrow, so looking forward to that. With Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker.